I'm going to quit my job. And I suggest you quit your job. Then go and find another job, so you can quit that job.
Quit your job, go and find another job, and then quit that job. Shout out to the Shabs for the awesome theme music. That's a song called Quit Your Job by the Shabs. Go check them out. It's a killer video. They've got loads of brilliant songs. They also kind of need a little bit of help. They've got a GoFundMe, I think. Could be a Kickstarter, something like that. I think a GoFundMe. But go look on their Facebook, the Shabs. They organized a whole European tour. And these are not wealthy musicians. They're hardworking, earn a wage by playing shows kind of musicians. Great dudes, brilliant music, and the nicest guys and lady. And they organized a whole European tour, paid for everything. If I'm not mistaken, it was like 70,000 Rand, which is $4,000. $4,000, and they paid for the whole thing, and they got themselves to Europe, and like literally that same week the shit hit the fan. They had to get out while they could because things were being closed down coming into South Africa and leaving and arriving in European countries. I don't think they got to play any of their shows and recoup any of their money. They might have played like 1 or 2 out of 20 or whatever it was, and now they're home and sitting with a lot of bills to pay. So if you go check them out on Facebook, they've got a GoFundMe, and they are giving away all sorts of awesome stuff if you pledge a bit of money, or just pledge some money, 50 Rand, $100 if you've got something, because these are hardworking, good dudes. Yeah, that's a really crap one. Like, they have to pay up front for their tour, go on the tour, recoup their costs from playing shows, and, break even, possibly make like a small profit. So you can get like signed goods, you can get vinyls, you can get merch, t-shirts, special artwork. If you put down enough money, they'll even write you a song. And these dudes write great songs. So shout out to the Shabs. Welcome to episode 1. A couple of people have asked me why episode 0 was episode 0. And that's for a couple of reasons. It's because there was no real theme to it. It was like an introduction to me. A lot of the people who are watching this so far and commenting on it so far know me and know either a bit or a lot about my backstory. I don't want to always be going back and telling the story of who I am and where I come from. And I also don't want to always be explaining the theme of this podcast, this show in general. Each episode, in theory, should be about something or about a couple of things. And also, I was trying to kind of basically see if I could get it to work. I was figuring it out, basically. So on that topic, let me move that. My little pictures, I put them up. I hope they don't fall down. I couldn't buy double-sided tape because of the lockdown situation. One supermarket had their whole hardware/stationery section closed off. The other supermarket nearby, this is a Pick and Pay and a Checkers for those South African people. The Checkers, you can buy hardware, you can buy kettles, microwaves, scissors, Pritt stick, whatever you need, but they were sold out of double-sided tape. And the Pick and Pay, they have shut all of that down with plastic bags and stuff. So I'm not about to have a Corin moment and freak out because the law is not being implemented. But, I don't like it when rules are subjective. I don't like it when you get told by someone in a position of authority, especially in a position of like temporary artificial authority, like a body corporate person or the adult equivalent of a road crossing guard, that at their discretion a rule is allowed or it's not allowed. I, in my younger years, would have probably behaved a bit more like me old dad and made a stink about it and insisted that, they either open up or the other place close up, and gone on Facebook and had an argument. But I don't care enough. I just think it's odd that one store closes 3 aisles of stationery and hardware department and the other store has those aisles open completely. It's not as if they've both closed their aisles, but the one place is selling scissors and the others isn't. Anyway, doesn't matter. But I'm using a minimal amount of double-sided tape. The studio, are you fooled yet? Does it look like an actual studio yet? I'd also like to thank every single person that supported this and the awesome comments that I've gotten, up to close to 900 views, which I can't believe. I know it's the literal drop in the ocean when it comes to online video and channels and the amount of subscribers and views some people have, but 900-ish views and 160-ish subscribers on the first episode, which wasn't actually really about anything, is really amazing to me, and I appreciate it. It's a big kind of justification or validation. It gives me enthusiasm to continue. And there's been some great comments. There've been some people who I know that have taken the time to watch it, who I thought would have been well sick of me talking after knowing me for so many years. And there've been some new people who have checked it out and don't know me from Adam and have kind of said, yeah, man, it was useful and inspiring. And a lot of people that listen to me on the Gareth Cliff Show, which I do on Wednesday mornings, 80 to 90% of the time. And you should really check that out. It's a great show, whether I'm on it or not. Shout out to Gareth Cliff for always being great and cool and supportive of me and this and being on the show. So a lot of listeners of that show kind of called for this show. If you're following the That Show, This Show narrative, and some of those have expressed that they're really happy to have a whole hour or so of me. So thank you to everyone that gives a shit and has taken the time. And I'm really kind of stoked because, as I mentioned in episode 0, I've been meaning to do this for a long time. So the feedback that I've had from episode 0 has been positive, and people have basically said that it's inspiring. And the part of the show that did kind of have a theme was to explain the general purpose of the podcast, which is basically to figure life out and not to pontificate and tell people how to live, but to kind of try and figure out for myself how to live and see if anybody wants to follow my inner monologue as I try and do that. The one theme of it was really you can't be expected, or you shouldn't put pressure on yourself to achieve all your hidden past. One day I'll get to it. I wish I had more time for X, Y, and Z. Did ballet 20 years ago, and by the end of isolation/lockdown, you should have started a ballet school and be ready to move careers completely in the space of what is essentially a month. More now, it's going to be 5 weeks. Anyway, I'm bad at two things, and it's maths. Point is, people often know that they don't like doing what they are doing, but they don't know what they'd like to be doing instead. They just know that work submission and I'm underpaid and I'm barely making ends meet. And then there's an aspect of spending that third of your life. In theory, works 8 hours a day, 9 with a lunch break, which is a third of the day. In reality, in advertising especially, it's 9-ish until we own you forever, and that's you do whatever. Nothing. All that matters is the deadline, and your soul isn't important. So that brings me to more or less the kind of broad topic of today. Oh, shout out to Prince Vegeta, His Royal Highness of the Saiyan Empire, watching over us on the side there. And shout out to Steve Pinto for bringing me that from Japan, I think it was. Anyway, so the theme-ish of this particular episode 1. And again, if you're catching this for the first time, you have no idea who I am, what I'm talking about, or why you should care, but you've been seduced by the charm and mysticism so far, go check that one out. There was talk of putting aside and moving away from what you have done, and kind of a lot of people, and I did stipulate it's not everybody. And I also did stipulate that this is what I'm trying to do. If you're very happy with your life and you're happy earning a salary and looking after your business and putting away money and paying the bills, and that's the life you want, then there's by no means is that bad. But for me, it's not working, and it feels like a slow march toward death. But it was a little bit negative. It was a little bit pessimistic, because it was talking about the reasons why you might not be fully living your life. And once again, and I probably will restipulate this a few times, when I say you're doing this, you do that, on Facebook you behave like this, I'm almost always talking about we. I'm almost always including myself. So kind of take it as a royal we, and not a me pontificating from my high horse saying this is what you inferior people do. I'm very much analyzing my own life. So, for me, I looked at it as a thing that you do. Work is a thing that you do so that you can spend the other 2/3 of your life split between sleeping and living. And then you think, okay, well, if you want to try and exercise or have any kind of a routine hobby or something, and you've got kids and a family, whatever, so you've got to try and basically find sort of, they say 8, medically it's more like 9 or 10. Realistically, most people who don't have proper insomnia operate on 6, but let's call it 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night. I've got a long history of insomnia. I've actually been a lot better the last few years. It legitimately nearly killed me in 2016 after about a 4-year increasingly rough battle with it. So sleep issues are quite sensitive for me, and I'm just like, when something really, really hectic has literally almost killed you, or literally almost driven you insane, or in my case, or ruined your life, or you've lost everything, or you've recovered from a terrible illness or an injury, or beaten, God forbid, cancer or something like that. And I'm not trying to say that almost dying of insomnia and having the darkest 6 months and especially 3 months of your life is the same as having cancer. I'm just saying, when something really bad happens that you're not sure you're going to be okay from, it kind of puts in perspective what isn't important and changes a person. For me, I still have the capacity for stress. I still have the capacity for negativity. I can still be a real dick. I've got all the negative character traits that I always have had, but it's a lot harder to get me to give a shit. It's a lot harder to make me feel like the whole world depends on this project or this deadline. And I fully commit when I do work. I don't like to take people's money if I'm not giving it a proper go, or at least putting out work of a quality I'm happy with. I don't just not care and oh, screw it. Hey, let me just walk out of this job or this gig that I'm doing, in my line of work, which is contract advertising. It's not as if I don't anymore have standards or philosophical guidelines, actually in a lot of ways more so. But when you realize you might lose your job or the business might go under, you go okay, well, I'm many more steps away from sleeping in the road and not having food than it might seem. Obviously at all costs prevent losing the place you live in and defaulting on all your debit orders and not paying your medical aid. Because medical aid, you need that shit, even a hospital plan, because it's wearing masks and that for corona. You're not necessarily doing it to protect yourself, although there is that. You're also doing it to protect the people that love you from, God forbid, something, and I say God forbid philosophically, metaphorically rather, science forbid, anything bloody terrible happens to you and you're on life support for 5 years before you either come out never the same, always needing therapy, or don't come out. Your family will bankrupt themselves and lose their houses and whatever, probably, if you have loving family, to keep you alive. So you need some sort of a hospital plan so that other people don't ever get financially ruined because you're in hospital. Anyway, you don't want those bills to not come off. You want to prevent that stuff from happening. That's the grown-up stuff of life. But when you realize that there are worse things than losing your stuff or then being declared bankrupt, not that it's happened to me and I hope that it never does, but it seems like those things are the end of the world. And you realize you're actually free. You're really just largely attached to stuff, and the stuff that you need and the services that you need and the debit orders that go off in order to service the stuff. What's important is a dignified roof over your head and, clean bedding to me, and food of a decent quality, and then companionship and relationships. Everything else is icing. I'm by no means rich, but I've got a nice little, 2-bedroom apartment in a townhouse, a complex unit in glamorous Douglasdale, 4 ways adjacent, 5 ways China. Whereas Kalami, make no mistake, is 3 ways. And, I've got a dank TV in my lounge. I've got my old TV that I replaced, which is still pretty cool, in my room. I've got a guest room, which at the moment is full of all kinds of crap that I've had to move to turn my kitchen table into the most glamorous studio in the world. I've come to realize with this lockdown period, I've really kind of got everything I need. I drive a Toyota Auris that looks like a stormtrooper helmet from Star Wars. It's 7 or 8 years old. It's a very middling car. It's got it's not total garbage, but it reminds me of the dreadful person I bought it from, but that's neither here nor there. But it's a decent car. It's not great. I live in a 2-bedroom Douglasdale apartment with a garden. It's not amazing, but it's got a garden, which is largely for my cat, although I started a veggie garden recently. I've got good internet, 20 meg fiber line that works mostly like 99% of the time. So yeah, shout out SA Digital Villages. I used to be a very complainy person on Facebook, consumer ranting, and I still will from time to time consumer rant. Usually I'll delete it within an hour once I've calmed down, but it's rare. Those people who've known me a long time will know that it was almost daily at one point, and I try to make it witty and funny so people didn't like leave because I'm so painful. But yeah, if I got bad service, I'd take it personally. I'd be a massive Karen about it, and I would make a scene. Now it's like in the heat of the moment when something really like legitimately unacceptable does happen. But yeah, my place is cool, and like shout out to SA Digital Villages. I get my fiber through them. It's been really good. This is not a list of me bragging about the stuff that I've got. The point is it's a relatively humble situation. I got a dank fridge. Super stoked about my fridge. Anyway, never mind. My friends will know. But I could use a much nicer car. I could use an extra bedroom to kind of turn into a studio for doing art and recording this podcast. I could use, and I mean, I don't know what I would do with a bigger TV. I got a 55-inch dank boy, a thick boy over there. I've got 2 bass guitars, one of which I play. I could maybe do with the Gibson version of the ESP Limited that I've got. But like, I don't actually need anything. And I mean, I'm not above consumerism. I'm not like some sort of Gandhi character that wants to walk around in a hand-spun loincloth. I've got a real soft spot for sneakers, especially Nike Air Max 1s. God damn. I've got more pairs than any human really does need. But you also got to kind of look presentable. I'm not a fashion victim. I mean, I don't like craft and Photoshop my profile pictures and like spend 4 hours on my eyebrows every day and, you know, like really fuss too much about how I dress. No disrespect to people that do. It's not about me, how you dress. But like my point is, it isn't a big deal for me, and neither is owning expensive things. But I got Le Creuset stuff, got a massive soft spot for Le Creuset stuff, some of which I don't use, but it looks nice. So yeah, man, like I get it, but at the same time, I don't actually need anything. And I've come to realize that like certain things are important and certain things aren't. And yeah, man, I've also probably neglected the kind of investment, future planning side of my life a little bit. I'm 38. I'm trying to make like having that a little bit more lined up a priority by the time I get to 40. Mentioned it in the previous episode. I'm not like afraid of aging. I'm not horrified at my age, but I do realize that like as a single guy with no family and you know, on the one hand no dependents, but on the well, you know, I try to help take care of my parents, but that's not for the podcast. The point is I don't have any like direct dependents. I don't need to pay for school for anyone at the moment, but I should be future planning a little bit better. And those are important things, the debit orders, the bits and pieces of luxuries that do matter to you, that bring you actual joy and are not just for the purpose of having nicer things than the next guy. And future planning is important, but that's all that's important. You know, like having the newest toys and all of that, it's kind of like there to fill holes that you would rather not pay attention to, and the kind of stuff that this podcast is intended to be about. And to that end, I was thinking about like my previous episode and how I kind of implied that everything that I'm doing advertising wise feels like trying to service a car with a penknife. It's taking my best skills and abilities and using them for something they're not intended for. And I'm like so committed to this book company, this little publishing company that I've started. More on that to follow. Also, the support of that's been amazing. People who are looking to read the first story, which I'm busy illustrating, is called The People Who Forgot to Be Nice. It's had an amazing reaction. People have called for and even demanded that it becomes a book. I've been working really hard the last 3 weeks on sharpening my drawing skills and getting those illustrations done. There are a couple of illustrations that I've put up on my Instagram at Gord Laws, and The kind of Kickstarter for that particular first book will be live soon. In the meantime, go and check out the written story, which is on gordlaws.coza, The People Who Forgot to Be Nice, and you'll get a sense of what I'm doing. But I'm really committed to that because that is what I want to do. I don't want to do advertising anymore. It feels hollow, and I still, as I mentioned again, I don't want to retread too much of the last episode, but I'm picking up where that one left off. So I mentioned that I do get a thrill, and I do get satisfaction, and I do get inspiration from cracking the big idea, from putting together a thing that I'm excited about, that I think is good, solid work, and then the clients buy it, that small percentage of the time that they can kind of see the bigger picture and buy it, and working with great people, like some of the ones I was working with the first 2 months of this year. But most of the time it's just a shag. You're just making meaningless garbage for clients that don't understand what a good message is, and just want to make more safe beige garbage. But I implied that I've been running on a treadmill and wasting my talents and my abilities for my whole career, and that isn't the case. I've actually had a really, really great working life, and it's enabled me to do and experience a lot of things that have been totally amazing. It just isn't doing that anymore. So where I'm going with this is that I'm not suggesting that because you feel a bit uninspired by your job and a bit kind of on a treadmill, and that it's not what your soul's crying out for. Excuse me. I'm more suggesting that there comes a time when it's done, and there comes a time to move on to the next thing, and you'll hear that calling. And so you're not starting over. I'm not suggesting that you start over, but you're building on what it is that you have already learned. So I wanted to talk about some of the cool things that I've done and learned, and some of the experiences that I've had where maybe behaviors have been a little bit self-destructive and certainly unsustainable, but I wouldn't even having had one really, really hard, and you might even say abusive relationship that derailed me a little bit a couple of years ago. Even those negative experiences, I wouldn't want to wish. I don't have a worst enemy. Excuse me again. And there's only there's a handful. I mean, I would have to sit and think about it to come up with the names of more than 3 or 4 people that I kind of actively dislike. There are a lot of people who I can totally do without, and quite happy to never see or be around, and some people who are a nightmare on the internet, but I haven't really got enemies. And there's literally maybe 3 or 4 people that if I run into them, it's going to be some words. But I wouldn't wish the insomnia thing on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish that. And this is acute insomnia is insomnia where you don't just have occasional sleeplessness. You cannot sleep. Your body is unable to achieve the processes that it needs in order to put the brain to sleep, and it can kill you. There's a huge risk of stroke or heart attack, and that's where I was. And I mean, you go mad, mad, not I'm having the worst time ever. OMG, I'm so tired. Headache. You start going insane. Your brain starts to break, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I also wouldn't wish the kind of narcissistic, sort of physically and definitely mental and gaslighty, abusive relationship I've been in. And this isn't about that. To the 7 people listening that know who I'm talking about and are in touch with them, no one cares. The point is that I've been through some shit, and it was not the kind of, I wouldn't say everyone should go through it because benefits, but that stuff is really put into perspective that my life needs to be in a different place. And I don't regret anything really. I'd rather not have regained 1 million kilos 3 or 4 times in my life after losing it. But I'm here now, and I've got a lot of cool stuff going for me, and I'm finally writing and illustrating my kids' books. I've got a second book now in the works, which one of the most talented people I've ever known, Danae Buerta, aka the Real Pixel Poet on Instagram. She's illustrating the book, and I'm writing it. I've got it busy crafting the copy, and I'm illustrating the first one myself, and I'm really excited. And and also we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so I'm not exactly celebrating. I'm not saying, yay, isolation, lockdown, global economic crisis, millions of people at risk of death and suffering. But I mean, given the circumstances, here I am, overweight, trying to get that sorted. It's been a real hard battle for 2 or 3 years, and I always end up taking 2 steps forward and then end up taking another 3 back. But I don't give up, and I'm feeling positive because I'm there's just much more good in my life than there is bad. And I look back on the things that I've done where I've gone, okay, that was getting out of hand, or that wasn't good behavior, or, I shouldn't have done that. But if you believe in something like the butterfly effect, you kind of have to understand that if any of the painful things that in isolation were painful were to be undone, for example, like a relationship where there was a point halfway through a several year process where I kind of knew this is not a kosher situation and stuck around for way longer than I should have, but I still experienced a bunch of things and did a whole lot of things of life and learned a lot from the pain, So they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I believe that was Freud, but it might have been Nietzsche. Now I'm questioning it. But I find a lot of meaning in all of it, and I have made wonderful friends, and I've done stuff that at the time was dangerous, certainly, and certainly irresponsible. And in retrospect, is the kind of behavior, if I had a kid or if I was going to go back and give my past self advice, I'd say, dude, you don't need to be going down that road. You don't need to be burning it at both ends so hard. I'm certainly not still the same person I was 5, 10, 15 years ago, but those experiences that I would advise against have made me who I am. And so, I finished varsity. I don't smoke weed. I don't advise it. I'm not against it. That would be hugely hypocritical of me. I used to be a huge stoner for many years, but I haven't now for a lot of years. And every time I dabble, it just reminds me how much it sort of screws my head up. It makes me anxious. It makes me eat uncontrollably. I have like an eating disorder, and it's kind of it's seesawing between manageable and unmanageable, depending on which time of which year you catch me. And my friends that kind of don't see me for 6 months or a year, and then when they see me, I'm a completely different shape, and they don't bat an eyelid. Those people mean the world to me, and you guys know who you are. But those are the experiences that have made me who I am right now. And so I was quite a passionate stoner in varsity and through my 20s on and off, and then not so much in my 30s. And I'm certainly not speaking against weed. I don't have an opinion. I know some people believe they're way better off without it. But I do think, like with anything, like an eating disorder, like with unhealthy levels of promiscuity, like with alcoholism, especially manageable alcoholism, when people are off the rails and can't function, they have to kind of face up to having a problem. It's a difficult one where you are functioning and you are getting your work done, but everything's hard, and you don't realize the fact that it's hard because you're doing this thing that you think is your relief. And that could be weed, that could be excessive partying on the weekend, that could be, like getting through the week just to get through the week, and then going and caning it all weekend, and then having a great time with your chums, squeaking tacky at the rave, going and rocking out to the metal bands, and then being massively hungover for the whole of Sunday and still feeling a bit cuck on Monday, and then being grumpy on Tuesday, feeling a little bit better on Wednesday, feeling chipper as hell on Thursday. And by Friday, you're ready to jawl because you're in the best mood ever, and you can't remember what the I'm never doing that again fuss about was on Sunday or Monday. And that can become years. So whatever your thing is, and for me, it's like I eat when I'm bored. And I kind of, some part of me also like tells me, don't go do the engaging, soul enriching, necessary art thing, or don't do that admin that's hanging over you. Let's sit down and just quickly eat everything and maybe watch a show on Netflix and then hate ourselves while we're doing it. So, I've been down all of those roads. Thankfully, I've never had a substance issue that's like made my life completely untenable, or where I haven't been able to say, okay, dude, like this has been a lot for long now, need to take a little bit of time off. I take time away from drinking, just summer. Like I kind of need the occasional. I sometimes get bored with it, basically, and I find it's hard. Like I'm not above drinking, and the point that I'm getting to with this is that I'm not above weed, I'm not above booze, I'm not above the massive weekend thing and whatever else needs to happen there, and I'm not above ever doing that kind of thing again if there's a time and a place for it. You know, I partied hard and drank a lot and jawled very hard with some wonderful friends. Big up Dane and Josh and the crew on Christmas and New Year. And I again jawled in February. I drank and partied for a weekend where I had a good friend from out of town, and I kind of actually regretted it. Like, it didn't ruin the weekend, but it really, like, it became about the jawl, and it should have been about going and doing cool things and whatever. And other than that, I've drank 3 times in the last 5-6 months, and I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm not saying I'll never drink again. It's not like an all or nothing, you know, counting days of sobriety thing. I know some people need that and some people thrive on that. Shout out to my buddy Nick, Nick the Fool, who celebrated his 5 years of sobriety recently and put out a little video on Facebook. He's taken it down for personal reasons, but he put out a very honest video, and he's a great guy and I love him and he's an inspiration. So shout out Nick the Fool. It's the reason I'm bringing up his personal business is because it's not a secret. He's open about it and I'm very proud of him. So yeah, man, however you deal with it, the broader point that I'm taking ages to get to is that, have you experimented with sobriety, right? Weed might be the thing for you. It might be what takes the edge off for you. It might be good for you. What I don't enjoy is when people who just want to get stoned and sit and eat Fritos, which is what I did for a decade. No disrespect. Cool. That's rad. But makes it about something else to justify it. Like, you make it about the cure for cancer, or, you know, it's supposed to help people with Alzheimer's, or it cures glaucoma, and you don't have any of those problems. It's like, you know, me saying, I was going to say, like, you know, masturbation is good for joint pain in your wrist, but you don't have joint pain in your wrist. But I'll rather not say that because it's a terrible analogy. Just be honest about your indulgence, you know? Like, I don't even eat for fun. I don't even overeat for pleasure. It's more like a goddamn disease, and I wish I could understand it. So no high horse here. But, like, okay, so quitting weed is something I've done a few times in my life. And I was mega dependent on it for a long time. And I now realize that for me personally, and my psychiatrist told me once as well, like, she prescribes weed for certain people. And so she's not against it, but she told me for my profile and stuff and personal issues and whatever, it is like the worst thing for me. She's like, obviously her advice was not to do drugs, but if I have to pick a drug, this one should be like right at the back of my list. But for other people, she'll prescribe it. So it has its uses. But I'm saying, like, if you believe that you get home from work and you're so anxious and, you know, you want to chill on the weekend and you can't relax and you've got anxiety and there's depression and all of this, and once you hit that sweet, sweet joint, you feel better and everything's fine again for a while, and you sit in your own head and replay the same scary movie over and over, but you can smoke and take your mind away and get out of your life. Maybe it's a sign that whatever's wrong in your life needs seeing to, but more than that, you might not realize that, like, smoking the joint isn't curing the anxiety. The 3/4 of a day or several hours, or in some cases like the 15 minutes after waking up, without it is what's causing the anxiety. That's how kind of addiction and withdrawal work. And, you know, people kind of see addiction in terms of black and white. They see it like you're either dysfunctionally addicted and need to go to rehab, or, you know, if you're paying your bills and not getting fired from your job, you're fine. And I have been looking at how people have been really struggling with the sobriety thing during lockdown. And it's made me, like, not judgy, not angry, not like reformed alcoholic, because I don't see myself as an alcoholic, and my not drinking right now is not about like save my life, quit this demon disease. I just really don't want to. I'm just not in that place. I'm less and less inclined to drink as I get older, and more the time I take away from it, I wonder why I ever did it in the first place. But then I know at some point I'm going to be really bored and there's going to be some sick drum and bass party coming up and I'm going to want to throw down with my friends, and then I will. But I'm seeing how some people are treating, like, some people who are functioning people, smart people, not people in trouble, are treating like lockdown prohibition like it's a real injustice or it's terribly unfair. Words like need or can't get, like, and some people angrily insisting that the ban be lifted. It's like, okay, cool. drink every day. It's not my business, not for me to say do it or don't do it. But like, have you experimented with sobriety? And to those people that like think the weed is curing the anxiety, maybe it is. But if you like me, I smoked every single day for 7 years. And that was like varsity and 4 or 5 years afterwards. And then when I was working for FHM, I went on a work mission to Germany to go to the Oktoberfest as Captain Beer, this masked beer drinking superhero that I used to play on behalf of the magazine. People would always say like, dude, that's so rad. They pay you to go on drinking missions. And I'd be like, well, no, like, I'm the features editor at the magazine. So I kind of plan, and along with the editor and a few other people who are, there was a team thing. Everyone made suggestions and contributions, but my responsibility was the editorial content, the stuff you read, the feature articles, the shorter articles, the big interviews with celebs and stuff. So like I was there, I would send myself to give up a weekend a month to go and get hammered amongst like seething masses of people partying that want to drink you to death with a photographer and need to go and have an actual legitimate authentic jawl while staying about my job and then write a story about it. So, it was amazing. I did so many amazing things. Back to the point about like my career and everything that I've done that I want to move away from now, having a lot of like creating a lot of brilliant memories for me until they didn't anymore. But I used to go and do the Captain Beer missions, and I had to go. I didn't have to. I arranged for myself along with Contiki sponsored, along with a photographer for a Contiki sponsored Oktoberfest mission. This was 2005, and that was the first time I'd not smoked weed in 7 years. Because I was traveling, I hadn't been overseas since high school, and also the most bizarre trip, man. Contiki sponsored us, so I can't complain about a free trip. But they flew us to London, then didn't put us up. Like the tour only started early the next morning, so we arrived at like midday in London. Went to go to find the Contiki office, checked in for our tour, and we were like, "Cool, rad. We'd like to go and shower and change." And they were like, "Well, the tour starts tomorrow at like 10 a.m. Don't be late." So we had to use most of our per diem to, which is like a daily budget for those who don't know that term, a daily expense budget, because it was a sponsored tour. So like accommodation, meals, the whole thing was covered, but we needed money for drinks and food and incidentals to rent the cheapest hotel we could find. It was pretty sketchy to have a place to sleep. So we could go to the place, to the Contiki office the next morning, take a bus to the cliffs of Dover, put the bus on a boat, take the ferry across to the channel to France, drive through France, and then arrive in Munich for the beer fest. So that took 2 days, and why they didn't just fly us to Munich, I'll never understand. But, in retrospect, it was on those bus drives to and from that I made a bunch of good friends and had a whole bunch of really good memories. And also where I went through 2 or 3 days. The flying process is like a Dubai stopover. It's like the better part of 24 hours. Then there's like we don't have a place to sleep. Most of it, almost 24 hours, sort of midday till the next morning, sleepover. Then there's like a day and a half, 2 days bus/ferry mission. And like, it's only after like 5 days of traveling that you're at the actual Oktoberfest. And that adventure is like 3 nights, 4 days with a stop off at a concentration camp in Dachau, which was mind blowing. You're so sad and so heavy. Like the time I went with my good homies Gump and Tree, not their real names, but might as well be. And we went to the site of the 9/11 Twin Towers. Like, you leave there with your soul hurting, but what an experience. And so by the time I got to the Munich Oktoberfest for 3 days of jawling in a superhero outfit and representing South Africa, and out drinking an army of younger Australians. No, I suppose they were about my age. I was like 25 at the time, 26. I'd kind of shaken off the weed withdrawals, which for me is like a lot of sweats, a lot of shaking, a lot of real anxiety, a lot of being mega irritable. Like, you don't want to be around me during that week. And those, and then I could enjoy the Oktoberfest and then come home and start immediately smoking again and have gone through all of that for nothing. But like for a full week, if I quit weed, if I've been smoking weed, which obviously now I don't, I struggle to shake it off. Like I am really, really unhappy. I feel much worse before I feel better. But then when I feel better, I feel much better. You don't realize how bad you feel until you go through the process of feeling worse for a while to feel much better. And like, I honestly think, like, for me, It's a week of unable to sleep, cold sweats when I do sleep, shaking, panic attacks that feel like imminent death, real bad mood and irritability. That takes a week. And then for a week, you're like a bit depressed. Then for like a week, you're starting to feel better and thinking, hey, yeah, I'm still not great, but I'm kind of think I'm getting better here. And then after like 3, 4, even 5 weeks, you one day wake up and it's like a Disney scene. It's like you've got a little cartoon bluebird, a chubby cartoon bluebird going like and rubbing itself on your big toe. And, like you open your windows and there's cartoon Bambi and Thumper and all the woodland critters looking at you, and you hear harp music and it's like, welcome to life. And you go like, this is so much better. That's how I go. You might find like, I've been off weed for a month and I've never been more miserable and I just can't wait to get my sweet, sweet Mary Jane back on. Cool. But have you experimented with sobriety? Like, people, I will never tell people they should do drugs, but I think psychedelics are more good than bad if used correctly. People who've never tried them can't kind of comment. So maybe experiment with them safely and in your own time if that's something you want to do. Same with sobriety. Experiment with sobriety. So those people who are kind of, really struggling with or feeling hard done by or seeing the prohibition element of the lockdown in South Africa as a punishment, like if you're not raving alcoholics that have a problem, if you're finding that like you can't cope without the booze, it's maybe an important learning. You maybe didn't realize before that you've got dependency issues. And for those who are just like pissed off about it, like even if you love to drink every day, and even if you're always going to drink every day, and even if you don't see it as a problem, surely the opportunity for a 3 and now 5 week detox should be seen as a positive thing, and not like, oh my God, life sucks. So there's levels that I'm seeing. There's people who are like, oh God, this is such a bummer. It's so boring. What am I going to do now? Well, like, yeah, what are you going to do now? You can't have the jawl be the only thing you have in your life, because while I'm not here to tell people to jawl or not to jawl or judge people who do or don't jawl, like if that's all you have in your life, you're going to be doing a lot of it. And a lot of the jawl is a South Africanism for party and celebration and drinking and fun. But it's also like one of the most multifunctional words there is. It can be used to describe a place. You could be like, cool, we're all going for dinner tonight, but I don't know what the venue is. Like, where's the jawl? You could be like, it can simply mean to use or apply. Like, hey bro, like, let's jawl PS4. It can mean to play because it's fun. Or like, guys, I'm going to jawl some coffee. Like, or like, dudes, this door has a weird key. Like, how do I jawl this lock? Is one of the best words ever. So, but the jawl refers to either a big significant party, like if there's a Slayer concert coming up, although they've recently retired, but if there's a Metallica concert coming up, you're like, guys, the jawl is at the F&B Stadium. That's the jawl, big rave, whatever. And jawling refers to like that party life. So, excuse me, I keep sniffing, which is weird because I don't have any kind of a cold, but fuck it. So, if the jawl is that much of like, what do I do without this? Then maybe a 3-week break's useful, So there's a kind of like a suggestion is like maybe use this time to experiment with sobriety and also get through the difficult phase, because when you're doing a job that's hard and hours are hard and stressful and deadlines, you can't really afford to be in that irritable. You can't afford to necessarily be, well, you can if you want to, but it's harder to afford to be in that place where you are like very irritable, very like, I need this thing. I can't wait to get home. You've got a joint rolled for the car, for the drive home, or, you've got a bottle of wine that you're looking forward to drinking, or, you've got 6 beers and you're going to try have 4, but probably have 8. You don't want to go through that withdrawal, because that's what it is. It's the same as when you try to quit cigarettes. Like your mind tells you that you desperately want a cigarette because a cigarette's so lovely and would be so great right now, cigarette. But you, the day before you quit, knew that you hated these things and that they make you miserable and that they make you sick and that they're gross and that no judges. I used to smoke for many, many years, haven't for many, many years. Have a lot easier time controlling my weight when I don't smoke. So definitely kind of swap one addiction for another there. But I'm really glad I no longer smoke. Your brain suddenly goes from telling you, screw what we decided 2-3 days ago, cigarettes are the best and you really want one. But actually, you just feel crap because your body's dealing with withdrawal, and cigarette will cure the withdrawal but not raise you back up to the level where you'd like to be, that this anchors you down to. So, while you're working and stuff, to take 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, 2, 3 months off drinking, not to quit forever, not to do it because I said you must, which is so not the case with this video, but to try it. You might not be able to deal with a very stressful job. You might think to yourself, like, if I could just have like 3 or 4 weeks to get this out of my system, then I would, because you won't just then be able to get through work, you'll be better at work. You'll wake up feeling fresher. They say, and I'm not an expert on this particular field of like science and biology, because I'm very passionate about science and biology and learn as much as I can. But I've heard from more than one reliable source that alcohol, if you drink, especially if you get drunk, like if you reach a state of like incapacitation, it takes more than 7 days for your body to fully process that. You kind of think it's 1 or 2 days, right? As I've gotten over, like my hangovers have gotten way worse. I've always been a person that's had bad hangovers. Like even as a youngster in my like early and mid 20s, where no one gets hangovers, I would have little ones and other people would have none. Like I would play a drum and bass residency with my homie Dane, DJ Ambush, big up Initiate crew. We would play every, goddamn, I don't even remember if it was Thursday or Tuesday nights, but I'm pretty sure it was Thursday nights at a venue in Melville called Trans Sky, get it? For 3 or 4 years. We played there every single weekend. It was at least 2 years, probably more like 3, and a week rather. So I would, like a total asshole, drive there, as young people do, from like Sunninghill to Melville, which is 20, 30 kilometers, party until they close the doors at 2 a.m., perform, rap for like an hour or 2, sweat my ass off, and then, be drunk, and then drive home drunk like an idiot. I mean, I lost my best friend, shout out Bundy, 2004, Stephen Bundy Bundred, never forgotten, to drunk driving, along with another one of our really good friends, Darren the Skill McGill, together in a car accident with drunk driving. And yet, like, you and your friends all cry, like the real tears, the ugly tears, and then continue drink and driving. Now I won't drink and drive. I mean, maybe if it was to save a family member and I was the only way to get to them and I'd had a few drinks, I just won't do it. I won't go out if I can't afford the Uber or have a teetotaling driver. Anyway, I would play this residency and I would like go to work to FHM the next morning and I'd be like, oh my God, guys, after like 3-4 hours of sleep, oh my God, guys, like this week's hangover is really bad. Oh God, like it's really, really terrible. And then go to the lovely lady Kathy who ran this little canteen in our building and get a toasted cheese and bacon and hit a strong cup of coffee. And by like 10 a.m., 11, I'd be like, wow, man, guys, that was a bad hangover. Phew, glad it's over now, and carry on with my life. Now, if I drink even a little bit, if I have 3 beers at night or half a bottle of wine, I will feel terrible the next day. If I get properly drunk, I cannot go to work. Like, I drink or party on a school night once, maybe twice a year, usually because there's some sort of situation where you have to, a farewell, like you never actually have to. Like recovered alcoholics and stuff, they get by fine and you get completely used to it. But those people who've quit drinking or who don't drink or who sometimes take time away from drinking will know that like drunk people are the best fun ever when you're drunk and they're a total nightmare when you're not. So like I kind of get my arm twisted and dragged out on a school night once, twice a year. And that's enough to remind me why I never, ever drink on school nights. I can't. I have hangovers that feel like death. I am trying to get back to the main point of this, which I'm skirting around. But, it's maybe a good idea to try to look at like whether there's meaning in the stuff that you're doing. Is there meaning in the stuff that you're taking in recreationally, or is that just the only way you know how to have fun? Is that because that's what your friends all do, and that's the way that you can participate in a friend group? Because having a friend group's important, and if jawling is key to what your friend group does, if you don't participate, you suddenly gonna not hang with them. Same as if you're like part of a music scene and everyone loves drum and bass, or everyone loves metal, or everyone loves ska and punk and rock shows, and that's what your friends do on weekends. If you suddenly decide, I actually hate this music and I don't want to go to these shows anymore, your friends are not going to stop as well so they can come and hang at your house and play pinball. So I get it, like, is there meaning in it? And that's also about work and stuff. When I worked at FHM, there was a great deal of meaning in it. Like, we didn't make a magazine that was like profound, but I have seen how a lot of people who probably never read the magazine and also just are riding a trendy zeitgeist of it's hip to be angry. A few years ago when the magazine closed down and had a little bit of a controversy, long after I'd left, two junior staff members said some stupid shit on their own personal social medias, obviously joking, but one of those where it's like, this is not a thing you're allowed to joke about. And I also, without getting into the details or mentioning who they were, these kids got lynched beyond anything that was appropriate. What they said was not funny, and they should have got a bit of stick for it. They lost their jobs, which harsh, but okay. But the whole magazine was then suddenly reframed in social media as being some sort of misogynist porn thing. And like, we were just the internet before the internet aimed at guys. All of our sex advice, the vast majority, I used to curate that. So almost all of it was always written by free-willed, strong women, for the benefit of men being better at serving the needs of women. There was never any like heavy nudity. You might have had a girl holding her boobs, but mostly it's like bikinis and lingerie. And most of it was like, people used to say about Playboy and Scope magazine in South Africa, like, I read it for the articles. You read FHM for the articles. And that was my remit. That was my main part of the thing. The reviews of games and movies and all of that. And I found great meaning in it because it was a lot of fun, and because I got to travel the world. I got to meet and watch loads of bands that I love. I got to hang out with Metallica. I'm going to tell that story. Including a segment in this, which is going to happen soon, called Epic Story Time. A friend of mine, Chantal, was telling me earlier, like, I've got so many good stories, I should publish a memoir. But a lot of it just sounds like name dropping and bragging, but there are some dope stories. Anyway, so there was a lot of meaning. And also initially in advertising, working at Owen Kessel with my friends Felix, Don, Beth, Sinead, Stephanie, Vaughan, and a couple of others. Like, there was a sense of team. You were working ridiculous deadlines, advertising stuff that you didn't necessarily care about, but like, you felt like a team. And when you got a beautiful piece of work done according to very high standards, you kind of were proud of it forever. Like, I'm proud of the business day ads we made in 2012 or 2013, Understand Your Country or Lose It. Like, they still look beautiful. They're still a good idea. They're still moving, and I love them. And, but being part of a team with these people made it all relevant and meaningful, and I felt like I wanted to achieve in the world of advertising, and I just don't see meaning in it anymore. But I now know, because I worked for one of the clients we had in advertising, especially, like, you work on millions of brands. Like, I've worked on 4 banks. I know how banking, I'm not now a qualified banker that I can understand doing economical things, but I know how banks work. I know how the business model looks. I know how the brands get structured. I worked on a competitor of Creepy Crawly, and they would have lost their mind if you referred to them as a company that makes Creepy Crawlies, because like, it's like Kleenex or Hoover. Creepy Crawly is like a brand. Automated pool cleaners are the product, and these guys would never, want to be referred to as a kind of creepy crawly. But yeah, a company that made creepy crawlies. I know how like reverse induction osmosis filters work. If you really want to spend a lot of money on a pool cleaner, I know how like a inverted ball diaphragm works. I know how the liquor industry works, because I've worked on loads of liquor brands. I've worked on many car brands. And you learn all of this stuff, right? So I'm not saying, with what I was touching on earlier and in the episode 0, I'm not saying scrap your career and go start making sandals in Neisner and paint for the first time and, find your spiritual. Build on what you've done before. I know now a lot about branding, a lot about marketing. I wrote hundreds, probably thousands of articles, big and small, for FHM in 8 years, got published in 21 different countries in about a dozen different languages, life experiences out the arse. Like in advertising, I've learned all of these businesses, and I've understood how their marketing model works and what's important to them. And now with the children's books that I'm working on and the things that I do, like podcasting, that comes from being able to present bands in the live environment, emceeing rock shows, just as an excuse to have bands take me with them on tour, either as their music journalist mate that they could trust, writing stories for FHM. Loads of bands that liked having me around, and I'll always be grateful. Shout outs to Pestroy and Fuzzy Gish and 16 Stitch and Facing the Gallows and Fokov Polisikar and Van Coke Cartel. They just had a reason to add you to their expense list as another bed, because you'd write a story about them in the magazine, or you would announce them as they were getting ready to take the stage. So there goes the fear of audiences, and all of that kind of is something that I'm now all using to build on what I want to do. So if you've been soullessly working as the logistics or distribution or accounting person for a company that makes something you don't care about at all, light bulbs, you know that business now intimately. You might have done a couple of jobs and you know how to work the nuts and bolts stuff of a business. You might know importing and exporting because that's something you've done in your business. You might be a developer or a programmer or an IT person that now knows of computers really, really deeply. You might be like my mate Louis that made magazines with me, and now he's one of the senior people at a huge online entertainment brand. I won't mention them. I never want to cast shame on anyone. Excuse the crunching noise. Little Blackie Chan's over here having a little snack. Blackie Chan, are you having a snack? Good job, little homie. She's very sweet. Follow the Blackie channel on Instagram to observe my bizarre love-hate relationship with my cat. And by love-hate, I mean I love her and she hates everything. Build on it. Just don't keep doing it once there's nothing to learn, once there's nowhere to go, once the only joy you get out of it is getting home, once you get that paycheck at the end of the month that's just enough to cover your bills, and what little extra there is that you I suggest you use, or I should do more to use to invest in the future. You need that for the jawl, because the jawl's all there is. Embrace 3 weeks it's 2.5 more weeks, or the better part of 2, whatever, of sobriety, because, hey, you might not have taken a month off drinking otherwise. So dig it. Don't complain. Get into it. And if you can't cope and it's driving you nuts and you can't live without the jawl, food for thought, to think about maybe something to approach a little bit differently. And that's really it. I want to do epic story time for the first time. We're almost at an hour, which is where I'd like to more or less stop these. But let's do epic story time. Epic story time. Epic story time. I'll eventually do some cool graphics and a bit of a sound intro. Epic story time. I was famously, my favorite name drop story of all time is to do with Lars Ulrich from Metallica. And so I don't like to humble brag, and I don't like to name drop. And I also generally, when I tell tales from the road, rock and excess stories, I'll change the names and faces to protect the guilty. But in this case, it's my favorite name drop story ever. So hugest Metallica fan of all time. Via my connections in the music industry, wonderful people that I got involved with, and most of whom are still my friends. Shout out Mike Pocock, shout out Morgan Ross, shout out Kevin Mbeki, homies from the music industry that always looked after us, Paul Spears, homies all over. And Metallica came to South Africa in 2006 for the first of their 2 South African tours, and I got to meet them and arrange an interview, and I met Lars, and they say don't meet your heroes, but Lars was dope. He was awesome. And then there was this FHM story called Captain Beer Stalks Metallica, and the idea was to follow the Coca-Cola Coke Fest tour with Metallica, Seether, who are great friends of mine as well. Rest in peace, Eugene Velgemuth, what a homie. The Rasmus, Simple Plan, what's his face from Collective Soul, and it was the whole of Collective Soul and a bunch of South African bands, and they played in Pretoria, where there was bizarrely nothing to drink, not even soft drinks. People were fainting and almost dying. What a weird thing. And then they played Durban, and then they played Cape Town. So I got my buddy Louis Dupassani and photographer Ross Garrett, and we road tripped around the country and flew around the country trying to stalk Metallica on tour. And the purpose of that was to try to party with them. And we basically failed because I did the interview with Lars as part of a press thing, and it was a great interview, and he was lovely. And I had my fanboy moment, and then I saw Metallica for the first time, and it was all just dreams come true. And then we followed the tour around, and we partied with all the bands except Metallica. James Hetfield was 3 years sober out of rehab and whatever. And so we just figured, they're not accessible. There's these after parties after every show, which we've got the creds to get into, largely thanks to the homies in Seether, to get into the proper VIP areas. And they're just not there. And like on the last night at a club that's no longer in Cape Town called Opium, we were getting ready to leave. We were like, cool, we drank, the party's over, we've been in the VIP, and we're about to leave. And Sean Velgemoot from Seether, Sean Morgan from Seether, his younger brother, who's a dear friend of mine who passed away, Eugene, he ran up as we were leaving and said, where are you guys going? Like, Metallica are in the VIP. And I was like, no, dude, we've been in the VIP the whole evening. They're not there. And he's like, no, dude, not the VIP, like the VIP, as I'll quote Bud Fighter, like the VIP, China. There was like a next level VIP, this bizarre room in the club that was like maybe 2/3 the size of a tennis court, and had a knight's armor and all sorts of old, like rich leather-bound books, Ron Burgundy looking shit all over the walls. And like, I walk in, and there's Kirk Hammett having a drink. I'm still in my Captain Beer stuff. He is famously like germaphobic, not germophobic. He doesn't like to shake people's hands or touch people he doesn't know. Lovely, lovely man, like sweetest man. He's everything he comes across in YouTube videos as this like sweet, lovely, fun-loving dude. And he gave me a big hug, and he was like, hey, how are you? And whatever. And I was like, oh my God, hi, Kirk Hammett, I'm fine. There's Rob Trujillo. I said, hey to Rob. I'd met him previously on the interview thing. And then Lars is sitting there. I'll never forget it as long as I live. This like 2-seater couch. In front of him, there's this like weird waiter serving station on wheels, like a cabinet on wheels with the sliding front and shelves. And he's sitting there, and it's just stocked with liquor. And he was like, oh, Gordy, you remembered my name. And he remembered my name in 2013, 7 years later, when I met him again. I had to remind him it was me because I'd lost like 1 million kilos, and then he remembered me. So big up to him for being a legit dude. I'm like, hey, Lars, hi, man. And he's like, how are you? Like, come and sit. I'm like, okay, I'll sit next to you now, Lars Ulrich. And he's like, I'm like, whose booze is all of this? And he's like, I guess it's mine. I don't know. They brought it here. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, do you want a vodka? I'm like, yes, Mr. Lars Ulrich, I'll have a vodka. So he pours a strong vodka, and we drink it together. And he's asking me about art. And I asked him how his kids were, and like, how the tour's been, because now this was the last show of the tour. And I'd met him on the day of the first show of the tour, and he was great, man. And during that time, Eugene, brother of Sean from Seether, and at the time, I think bass tech for Seether, because, hook your brother up a job and take him on tour. Bless that oak. He came and started messing around with the night suit, a full-on legitimate like night suit for human knights that was on the wall. And he had taken the helmet off and put it on his head and was running around being all like, ah. And he took a photo with me and Lars. We got on either side of him and we took a photo. And there's a photo that I still have of me kissing the night suit. And then we sat down and carried on talking. And then like an hour later, it's getting to like 3-4 in the morning, the manager of the club, who's a guy that I've actually come to know now, years later by coincidence, met him, and we had to talk about everything. And it was kind of a misunderstanding. Thanks, Fly. But he came and he kicked me out. And I was like, he wouldn't tell me why. He was just like, yo, it's enough now. You've been causing trouble. Don't make me call the bouncers. I said to Lars was like, dude, we haven't done anything. And he's like, no, not you, Mr. Ulrich. You can do whatever you want. And Lars was like, leave Gordy alone. And I was like, look, guys, it's 4. They're closing now anyway. Let's just go. And I said to Lars, hey, man, like, if you want to party more and, make mistakes and stuff, I'm down. And he took my number. And we were leaving and we were walking, my friend Claire, myself, Eugene, buddy Ross. We were walking to go and catch like an old school cab, Rafiki's taxis in Cape Town. And my phone rang, and it was like in the sort of era of I think it was like late Nokia or early BlackBerry days, but I had a Nokia phone. And you know, those things used to have like 2 or 3 day battery life. And when the battery died, you could like turn them back on and they'd give you like half an hour. Then it would die again. You turn it back on and give you 10 minutes. Then it would die again. You turn it back on and give you like 3 minutes. And then there would be a point where you could turn it on, like send an SMS. And my phone rang with a +61 number. And I answered it and the phone died. And when I tried to turn my phone back on, it was legitimately dead. And I was like, who with an American number would have been phoning me now? I just got kicked out of a nightclub with Lars 15 minutes ago and gave him my phone number. And now I think he's phoning me. And I was like heartbroken. But it was probably for the better anyway. We had like a noonish flight the next day we had to catch to get home, and then get to the airport, and lo and behold, as we were the worst hangover ever, even though I'm like only 27, 25, 26, I don't know, whatever. We arrive at the airport late, terrible hangover, hurting from not enough sleep, and there's Rob Trujillo pushing his own trolley with his stuff in it. And he sees me and he's like, dude. And I'm like, dude. And he's like, dude. I'm like, God, you are, dude. And then he didn't know where to go to find international departures. And he had a few people with him, and they were in domestic and they were looking around. So I was like, no, man, it's like all the way down there. You're in domestic. And he was like, hey, thanks, man. And like fist bumps. And I was like, I honestly just had like the ultimate fanboy experience for the ultimate Metallica fan, and I can die happy. And that was when I promised myself, after I'd seen them what then became 3 times, that I would see Metallica 10 times before either I die or they quit or everyone dies. And I'm on 9 now, so I'll tell some more stories from that epic quest. And again, a little bit, I won't lie, a little bit bragging, like, but that is a pretty rock and roll story. I got kicked out of a nightclub with Lars Ulrich, and then kind of sort of made friends. I would not exactly have his phone number and we text all the time, but he saw me 7 years later, and when I told him, hey, I was the fatto, because at this day, at 7 years ago, I was ripped again, like in really good shape, and I was like, I was the fat guy with the superhero outfit, and he was like, Gordy, and I was like, yes, and I was like, we had a catch up, and I brought him a copy of the story, and yeah, he was stoked to have it. That's part 2 of the Lars Ulrich story. I'll tell the second half because it's also very good, 7 years later, and equally chaotic, more so even, another time. But that was epic story time, epic story time, epic story time, to end this first edition of Trying Harder with Gord Laws. If you liked it, please do the like thing and just take the time to like it. And if you want to watch more of these, then please subscribe. It helps with metrics and algorithms and all that crap. If you don't want to, I don't always either, so whatevs. But for those of you who have, I really appreciate it. We'll see you soon. Keep trying harder. Good luck with the mental health and physical health, and take care of each other. #isolation. #we're all in this together. Love you, crazy bastards. Mwah.